to JW Highlights. My name is Vern, and today we'll be talking about apologies. Will the Watchtower apologize? So, does the Watchtower historically apologize when it screws up? When they make mistakes in their doctrine and people die or it causes lots of problems? Let's say we look at their mistaken view upon smallpox. They thought it was the smallpox vaccine they thought was from the devil. And lots of people died. And then later they had to retract and they said, yeah, no, the vaccine is good. It saved lots of people. So does the Watchtower apologize? No, they don't come out and apologize. They never have historically that I know of. In fact, I went onto their website and I plugged all this in. I was looking for apologies from the Watchtower. So let's first of all go to the Watchtower, jw.org, and we're right here. We plug in the word apologize, and there's lots of articles how to apologize. So they give lots of articles instructing us as their other sheep or the sheep to apologize, teaching us how to apologize. and teaching us why we should apologize, especially young people. And then Watchtower 1954, apology accepted. This was where some clergy apologized to the Jehovah's Witnesses. So here they put in there, oh yeah, we accepted the apology from the clergy from Texas. They're saying they made a public apology. Then there's the sheriff's apology. They you see anybody apologizing to them, they broadcast that. Then they talk about, is apology a sign of weakness? This is to the members. So they want the members to be very apologetic to each other, and a sincere apology accepted. So they talk about that. And then they talk about the priest apologizes for lies. So here, some priest in Uruguay apologized to the Watchtower, and they publicized it. They made a big thing about it in the Watchtower Library. And why is it so hard to apologize? They talk about, and apologizing a key to making peace. Nothing in here is about the Watchtower apologizing. I even searched deeper. I searched Watchtower apologies. Nothing under that. And the closest thing that I got to a search was, does the Watchtower ever apologize? I even searched that. And the closest thing I got was apologizing. So if you go to their index, the Watchtower Publications Index, and under the word apologizing, so this is a word index in their their encyclopedia, I guess you call it. So under that word, there's an article on accepting apologies humbly, admitting mistakes, children in use, a discussion, mates and parents, and when not at fault. So the only one was Rutherford. The only article where the Watchtower, today's Watchtower, actually pointed fingers at one of their own governing body is right here, Watchtower 93. We're going to pull that up. And in part, this Watchtower 1993, it says, though widely known as Judge Rutherford, he was at heart a humble man. And that's a complete lie. His wife left him in 1917 when he became president because he was so arrogant, he was so hard to live with. And if you do the research on Rutherford, he was one of the most arrogant and demanding persons on this earth. So this is a lie right here, a complete lie. He wasn't a humble man at all. So here's what it goes on to say. It says, for example, he once made some dogmatic statements as to what Christians could expect in 1925. Well, Rutherford was proclaiming the end of times, just like 1914, Russell was proclaiming it. So then Rutherford comes along and he said, no, it's 1925. So here, 100 years later, 70 years later, the Watchtower, the governing body of today, they say he made a mistake. It says he once made a dogmatic statement as to what Christians could expect. And then they went on to say, when events failed to support his expectations, he humbly told the Brooklyn Bethel family that he had made a fool of himself. An anointed Christian who had quite close association with him testified that time and again he heard Brother Rutherford apologize in the spirit of Matthew 5:23 and 24, both in public and in private, for having hurt a fellow Christian by some ill-advised expression. So here he's telling everyone the end is coming. People are selling off properties, donating money to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, going completely broke. And then the end doesn't come. And now all these people can't, they're out of work, or they lost their properties. They gave it all to the Watchtower. So ill-advised advice. And isn't that what's happening today? The Watchtower is telling everyone, pack your to-go bags, get ready, give it all to the Watchtower. We're going to look after you. Be careful. Rutherford did that back in 1925. Now, it goes on to say here in the Watchtower, it takes humility for one in a position of authority to apologize to those who are in subject to him. And Brother Rutherford set a fine example for all overseers, whether in the congregation, traveling work, or one of the society's branches. Completely a BS story. Rutherford was not humble. This is like 70 years later. These guys are trying to make a story about it. None of them even lived at that time. All the writers that wrote this article knew nothing about Rutherford. And this is completely twisted. So, but here they are, sidestepping, candy coating the 1925 prophecy from Rutherford, from the Watchtower of that time, that the end was coming, and it didn't happen. So here's how they candy coat things in the Watchtower. But that's it for apologies, folks. The only apology the modern day governing body could dig up is 175 years ago, Rutherford, back in 1925. Apparently, he apologized. But Rutherford did not write that. We didn't see that. This is written in 1995. So do we believe it? I don't. I don't buy it. So now, why don't I buy it? Because we're going to move on to Australian news, and we covered this article. Jehovah's Witnesses ignore Queensland child sexual assault survivor despite national readdress scheme. And the national readdress scheme is that all these apologies have to come out. Apologies have to come out, and there's no apologies coming from Jehovah's Witnesses. There's no apologies coming from Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. There's no apologies coming from jw.org. They do not print apologies. They do not apologize. Let's face it, if you were God's chosen organization, you're the governing body. There's 10, 8, 9 members up there in New York. They're God's chosen ones. Why would they have to apologize? They have no reason to apologize to the world. That's how they view it. Now, let's look at the Pope. Does the Pope apologize? The Pope's dealing with the same stuff. He's dealing with all these cover-ups, all these people. Pope Francis was brought into this. He was elected. He's Pope, and now he's got to deal with all this sexual abuse all over the world, and it's sickening. I was reading an article here about Pope Francis apologizes to sexual abuse victims, but still backs the bishop. So, there's some controversy there. And this is part of the Chile thing. And they were burning churches down in Chile and everything. And, so this is a long drawn out thing. So this article, this is old news. It's back in 2018 when the Pope was apologizing and having to deal with all of these cover-ups, just like in Pennsylvania. So now the Pope is also dealing with this in Pennsylvania. And here's another news article, and we'll just play it, where Pope Francis apologizes. And he releases a letter condemning abuse and cover-up. So we're going to play the whole thing because we want to show Jehovah's Witnesses this is what the other religions are doing. And we also know that the Catholic, the Mormons, and the JWs, the Jehovah's Witnesses, are all in to bed together when it comes to fighting CSA cases all over the USA right now. These religions are all into bed together. Their lawyers are all talking. They are working on the same thing. They're trying to keep private anything that's given to a priest in confession. So they're trying to make the elders in the congregation look like priests so that they don't have to give up anything that's confessed or anything that's in a judicial meeting. They're trying to make this the same as confession. So Jehovah's Witnesses want to be like clergy. The governing body wants to get the same rights as the clergy rights, but yet they don't want to apologize. Well, here it is. We'll just run this newscast here on, and this was an old one, but we're going to run it anyways, because would it not be nice if the governing body got up in front of the whole world and apologized? That's all a lot of people want.
Our top story, the Pope issuing a letter to the world's 2 billion Catholics and apologizing for the crime of sex abuse by priests in the wake of that scathing grand jury report I just mentioned. NBC's Ann Thompson has been covering this story really for too long, Ann, but this is a remarkable statement.
It really is, and it was prompted by that grand jury report out of Pennsylvania, Savannah and Hoda, and it is an extraordinary mea culpa from Pope Francis. In this letter to the people of God, he acknowledges the pain of the victims, saying that it never goes away, and saying that for too long the church ignored and kept quiet or silenced the heart-wrenching pain of these victims. He also goes after the church's actions in this scandal. He says, with shame and repentance, we acknowledge as an ecclesiastical community, read the church leadership, that we were not where we should have been. We did not act in a timely manner, realizing the magnitude and the gravity of the damage done to so many lives. We showed no care for the little ones. We abandoned them. Those are the kinds of words that people in churches across the country have been waiting to hear from Pope Francis since this grand jury report came out last week.
Well, words matter, but what matters more is action. Like, what will the church do? So do we know that?
Well, and the Pope addresses that in this letter. There's been a lot of talk in the church about whether the global church should adopt the zero tolerance policy that was instituted here in the United States in 2002. And that is basically one strike and you're out. If there is a credible accusation that you are accused of abusing a child, you are out. We saw that in the case of Cardinal McCarrick when an altar boy came forward decades later, and it was just one credible allegation. He was removed from ministry. The Pope said they delayed on these actions, but he now thinks that these actions could guarantee the prevention of abuse in the future. And that's what they're looking for. You can't do anything about the past. You can offer comfort. You can offer counsel. You can apologize, and that's what he's done in this letter. But the real challenge is, how do you prevent this abuse going forward? How do you ensure parents that their children will not be abused by the men who lead this church?
Well, at long last, we hear from the Pope, and the tenor of that statement so strong. I think people wanted to hear real shame, real repentance.
Real apology. I am so.
There's nothing like a romantic thing.
Okay, well, that's probably enough on that, on the Pope's apology. But it just goes to show that even the Pope is apologizing, recognizing that they have culpability, that their organization is guilty of all these cover-ups. So when is the Jehovah's Witness organization, when is the Watchtower going to stand up to the world and admit what's happened, admit to the cover-ups, and do something about it? Change their 2-witness rule, change some of their doctrine to protect the children. When is this going to happen? I don't think it's ever going to happen. And that is why, folks, in this email or in this video, in the descriptions, we are running a petition here in Canada to stop treating religious organizations as charities, ones like this that take no accountability for these cover-ups and for all the atrocities that their religious organization is responsible for. So we're encouraging people to get outside of a religion, their spirituality on the outside, without being infected by the moral degradation that we find within the churches of today. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time on JW Highlights. Bye for now.